Well, hello there, minders. Welcome back to the Mind of Watercolor. Had to skip another week last week in producing a video. Honestly, this month and next, don't know how regular I'm going to be. Mainly because we had a vacation, then I did a video for you guys. Then my wife had another joint surgery. That's her 4th joint surgery in 5 years. So I'm her caregiver. Next week, our grandkids start school, and we're managing 4 of those grandkids for my son, who's a single dad, and they're starting out the school year with sort of a half and half live in classroom e-learning situation. Anyway, that's going to take a lot of our time. So, and my wife's going to be recovering for weeks, so I don't know how many videos I'm going to put out for the rest of August or even some of September. There will be some, but my weekly schedule that I usually do may fall apart. We'll just have to see. Anyway, that said, just wanted to kind of get that out there. I try to let everyone know through the community posts on YouTube whether I'm going to be doing a video that week or not. So if you just watch for those, it'll let you know. Anyway, so let's get to this week's episode. And I had several requests to show my lettering process. This was a video which I'll put in the link down in the description. This was a botanical I did. It was a palette picks episode where I reviewed a palette of colors, but I didn't really get into the lettering. I think this was kind of done after the fact. I think the lettering only appeared actually in Instagram. And I had several requests to tell us how I did that or you know, my process for lettering. So that's what we're going to talk about. I have to be totally honest with you, though I don't do a lot of lettering. I actually have a lot of pieces in journals and sketchbooks that I want to add lettering to, and I just haven't gotten to it. This is an example, though, of what I like to do. And you don't have to be a calligrapher. You can draw the letters, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. I do some calligraphy. I actually did do this in brush pen right here, but you don't have to be a calligrapher. There are a lot of ways of just drawing and writing and coloring letters that work just fine, and they don't have to be fancy. They don't have to be this fancy. So let's just get into the process, and before I actually do any demo, let's just talk about ideas, where you get your ideas. Most of my career has been as a designer and / illustrator, but probably a lot more design than illustration, and I love designing in type. I like making it fun to look at. I like making it something that kind of dovetails and enhances the image that it goes with. You know, and assuming these sketchbooks will outlive me in generations to come, people can look at what I did and the notes that I put in there, the lettering I put in there, and know basically what it was about. There are so many reasons to letter. Travel journaling. Some of you out there do that. It could just be noting a location and a date. You can write notes. Let's take a look at a few other things that I did, and then I'll show you some places that I get ideas. I've shown this before, but let's just focus on the lettering for a minute. This is just round hand or copper plate, but I did it with a ballpoint pen. A lot of people don't know you can do round hand with a ballpoint pen. Again, you don't have to do it as calligraphy. You can draw it out with pencil first and then go back over it in ink. I do that sometimes because I don't always trust my calligraphy skills. Lots of things I still need to letter, but letter can just, as I mentioned, just be as simple as a location. This is some Queen Anne's lace. This was a location and a date. That tends to be the main thing that I do. This was done in watercolor pencil, and then I just sort of shadowed it with liner. You can use any medium, brush pens, watercolor pencil, colored pencil, liners, markers, you name it, whatever you feel comfortable with. It doesn't matter so much about light fastness, since most of them are in journals and sketchbooks. Here's another one, very simple. Here I just had the date that this mill was supposedly constructed. That was done in watercolor pencil and then liner, ink liner. Simple script. It can be humorous. I was waiting on my daughter who was having a dental appointment. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Dentist waiting room. Waiting. Uh-oh, Rachel's wisdom teeth have to come out. It's totally up to you. So this was fun. This is where I like to incorporate design into the renderings. This was the Botanical Gardens in Phoenix, Arizona. And I did this in pen and ink and just watercolored part of it, but that was colored pencil. Actually, watercolor pencil. Another botanical garden piece. There's another one, just location. I like to feature a main title, sort of what this subject is, and smaller type. Lots of great layout examples out there, and again, we'll show you some of where to get those ideas in a minute. Another one from Phoenix, Arizona, Papago Buttes. I like open type. You see me using that a lot just because I can watercolor inside of it. Again, that was watercolor pencil. In this case, a location and a date. Here's one I did a number of years ago when I first started my channel. And just, you can write notes, which I want to do in several of these sketchbook entries, but haven't. This just says, we're surrounded by dozens of trees that make me smile. These are hickories that turn beautiful golds and oranges in the fall. This is a really cool looking deckled edge watercolor book that I've hardly used. I don't like the paper very much for watercolor. It'll probably be fine for some media. I didn't like the way it reacted. But anyway, just some more basic lettering. This was all watercolor pencil. By the way, a number of these things that I'm showing you are actual videos, and if you haven't seen them, there will be a list of links below in the description in case both of these were videos, in case they're videos that you haven't seen. Had high hopes for that paper, but not real happy with it. Still, a lot of cases, it's just me moving on to other sketchbooks because I have so many that get sent to me for testing. So I'll eventually fill this up with something gouache or colored pencil or mixed media, not sure what. Pages sure are cool looking though, have to admit that. Alright, so inevitably the question that I get is, where do I get my ideas, or where can you get some good ideas? First and foremost, I think one of the best sources is Pinterest. And on Pinterest, you can just do a search for watercolor journal pages, and you will be presented with just hundreds and hundreds of ideas. Okay, some quite gorgeous and advanced. I mean, I really am not interested in doing that, although I love it. I mean, I might be interested in doing that. Who knows? That's a real calligraphy piece there, but that's like a gorgeous journal page. I'm mainly into just featuring the painting itself. See, I love things like this. Drawing frames. Take a look at Pinterest for journaling ideas and just the way to lay out type. It can be very simple. It's very bullet-like handwriting style. If you have a really neat handwriting, don't overthink it, okay? But on Pinterest, you're going to find all kinds of great ideas. Okay, so what about fonts? Again, there are some books. You don't need a book. We'll look at a book that I bought that I kind of like, but in terms of finding a lot of great fonts, one of my favorite spots is defont.com, and everything is categorized at the top. Here I'm looking at the retro category. And all of these can just be drawn by hand. And then the whole alphabet you can see. All right, so that's the web. Those are free resources. Let me show you a couple books that I have. First one is called the Artist Sketchbook. This is by Kathy Johnson. She also has a YouTube channel. She's not real active on it, but she has a few things on there that she's done. But she's a notable sketchbook artist. Not only talks about doing sketches and filling out your sketchbook, but she has a lot of ideas for layouts. And her stuff is not fancy. I mean, it's just pretty much handwritten, even the big type, which is totally acceptable. There's no rules. You do this to your liking. A lot of times it's just notes, handwritten notes, as I've mentioned. I thought that was pretty cool. That's a nice one. I just like her, I like to feature a single word and then make everything else subordinate to it. Could be a couple words basically as a title, or just identifying what the page is about or what the page is. Zoom in on these. I love doing this sort of thing. More handwritten note ideas. There are just thousands and thousands of ideas out there that you can draw from. They don't have to come right out of your head. Okay, this is not a free resource. This is a book, but I like this book. I've looked at a lot of hand lettering books. And hand lettering, again, is mostly drawing, although you can letter some of it by brush lettering or brush script. I liked this book, though, because it had some kind of interesting, quirky ideas, creative ideas for fonts. So many of the hand lettering books today feature brush lettering, which is very, very popular right now. Nothing wrong with brush lettering, but I don't want to do everything in brush lettering. It's just brush lettering is really not my thing. I want some other choices, some other fun choices that I can look at. And I thought this book had a lot of them. So if you prefer working from a book, and you like these unusual ideas, this will give you some. And it's got a whole list of alphabets in the back and a little workshop space for you to practice. If you want to do brush lettering, you can do brush lettering. There's some of that in here, but it's mostly not. There's brush lettering ideas on YouTube, in books, on Pinterest ad nauseum, so they're pretty easy to find. But I liked this book for its variety. Alright, so that's just sort of scratching the surface of ideas. There's plenty of ideas out there. Alright, well, let's actually do some lettering. I have a spread, and this is the Perfect Sketchbook B5. I have this spread, and this has been waiting for lettering forever. And ever and ever. This was actually a video in 2016. I took a trip to Charleston with my wife. It was a birthday gift where I just spent 2 days taking pictures and doing some sketching. This spread here represents the same inn. This is the inn here. It's called 2 Meeting Street Inn. There are actually a couple of Meeting Street inns in Charleston. Meeting Street is a long street that goes down the center of town. This is out on the Battery and overlooks the harbor. I will put a link to the video where I did some plein air on this. These are details. This is actually the lantern that sits atop the arch here. And this little potted plant detail is just inside the gate here. You can't see it. It's just behind the hedge on the other side of this hedge. So all I want to do is the title 2. And I want to make a big 2 and then Meeting Street Inn in smaller block type. Let's just do a couple thumbnails. You can plan this out in a thumbnail. You don't have to just start lettering and hope it turns out good, you know. I actually think I prefer 2 that's a little fancier than that. Let me see what's in here. Maybe something like that. I like that. I can widen out that space. And we got sort of these teardrop serifs going on here. And like I mentioned, I'm going to have a wider space, I think. It's just, you know, if you see something you want to try, just really, really roughly sketch it. That's what I want to do. 2 Meeting Street Inn. I usually will draw a font as a single line like this, and then where there are wider parts, I'll go on either side. You just want it to look balanced, not lopsided. And that's good enough. I'm going to come back with probably watercolor pencil and draw that in, but that gives me a guide. So Meeting Street, I'm going to use these lettering guides. I have these envelope addressing guides, but it also has a journaling and text guide, so I'm going to use that. Looks like the smallest one is probably good, and this is my optical center. You can also put centering marks, which might help, but I just want to lightly give myself a guide. So the S is going here. Yeah, that centers up pretty well. The color of this too, again, it needs to be fairly light. I want something that ties in, but I think maybe I'm going to come over here for like a brickish red and use that. I like bringing this color in over here. There is a little bit of the red brown in places, but not much. But it still ties in with this spread. So, and this will be light enough. So water will set graphite in a little bit. So I want to make sure that's light enough, because I won't be able to erase it much after. And it's really okay for these to have a hand-drawn look. And I'm going to skip out the spot where the type goes. I may draw that in later, or paint that in later. I'm not really sure how dark to make this yet. And before I do this, I'm going to go ahead and letter this in. For that, I'm using, I could just use a liner. I think I'm going to use this Lamy Joy. It's just a small tip, chisel tip calligraphy pen. But I'm just going to do it in block type. I'm going to tilt it to match my hand here. Alright, that looks like turn of the century, 1890s. Let me get some water now and color in that too. I'm just going to use a water brush, I think. And I usually like to color everything, even the solid parts, because that sets in the color, activates it, and the color becomes a little more intense. And I'm just pulling the color out from the line. Yeah, that's fun. I like that. It turned out better than I imagined, and that's always a good thing. Just going to put a circa date down here. This is going to be very light. I'm going to do it kind of italic. And as soon as I'm sure all that's dry, I'm going to erase the pencil. I think I'm going to put a note on just inside the spine. Now, this was a birthday plein air trip in April of 2016. And I'm just going to make a note of that. And it doesn't matter whether this is centered, so unfortunately my plain handwriting is not real great, but that'll have to do. Really all it needs to be done is erase this pencil here. Go ahead and erase that pencil. I really want to put a box around this, but I'm not sure why I want to. Well, let's go for it. We'll give it little curly Q corners. Maybe I'll stop it there. There's really nothing more to it than that. And just keep it simple. Don't overdo it. The way I like to think of it is put information that will mean something to you years later when you're looking at this, when somebody else is looking at this who maybe has never seen it before, when perhaps even a generation or two removed from you sees it. Just make it fun, make the information appropriate to what you want to remember. Simple as that. Just be sure to let your painting work shine through. It's better to have it very understated than to overpower it. Well, that's my focus and my tastes anyway. Obviously, there are a lot of artists out there that put a lot of attention and focus into the lettering, and that's fine if that's what you're going to do. But when you have watercolor artwork that you're wanting to feature, my feeling is it's better to underdo it than to overdo it, and just to accent what you have. Thanks, everybody. I hope this gave you some ideas, some inspiration to go into your journals and do a few things to spice it up, letter it, do whatever you like. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much, patrons, for your support. Appreciate it, and we will see everybody in the next video. Bye-bye.